What happens when an entitled prince meets a no-nonsense broadcaster who refuses to play by royal rules? You're about to witness one of the most explosive interviews in recent memory, where privilege collides with hard-hitting journalism and the results are absolutely devastating. Before we dive into this incredible confrontation, make sure you hit that subscribe button and let me know in the comments what you think about celebrities who can't handle tough questions. Trust me, you won't want to miss a single moment of what's about to unfold. The atmosphere in the Talk TV studio was electric that evening. Kevin O'Sullivan, known for his razor-sharp wit and refusal to bow to celebrity status, sat across from Prince Harry in what was supposed to be a routine promotional interview for the prince's latest charitable endeavor. But from the moment the cameras started rolling, it was clear this wasn't going to be your typical royal puff piece. Right then, Prince Harry, thank you for joining us tonight, Kevin began, his voice carrying that familiar blend of politeness and skepticism that had made him a formidable interviewer. I have to say, I'm curious about this new foundation of yours. You're asking the British public to donate money to help underprivileged children, which is admirable, but some might find it a bit rich coming from someone who's been quite vocal about his disdain for this country. Harry's posture stiffened immediately. I'm sorry, Kevin, but I think you're mischaracterizing my position entirely. I've never expressed disdain for Britain or its people. I've been critical of certain institutions and the way they operate, but that's hardly the same thing. Isn't it, though? Kevin pressed on, leaning forward slightly. You've spent the last few years giving interviews where you've essentially painted Britain as this terrible, oppressive place that you had to escape from. Now you're back, hand outstretched, asking for donations. Don't you see how that might come across as a bit tone-deaf? The prince's jaw tightened visibly. I think you're deliberately twisting my words, Kevin. I've been open about my struggles with certain aspects of royal life, but I've never attacked the British people themselves. This foundation is about helping children who need support, regardless of where they come from. But that's just it, isn't it? Kevin's voice took on a sharper edge. You talk about helping children while simultaneously undermining the very institutions that represent stability and continuity for millions of British children. You can't have it both ways, Prince Harry. You can't trash the monarchy in one breath and then expect people to rally behind your charitable causes in the next. Harry's face was beginning to flush with anger. I find your characterization of my actions deeply unfair. I've never trashed the monarchy. I've spoken honestly about my experiences and the challenges I faced. That's not the same as attacking the institution itself. Oh, come off it, Kevin scoffed. You've done everything short of calling the royal family a bunch of racist dinosaurs. Your wife went on national television and essentially accused unnamed members of your family of being concerned about your son's skin color? How exactly is that not attacking the institution? Now you're putting words in my mouth? Harry shot back, his voice rising. That interview was about sharing our truth and highlighting important issues around race and mental health. It was never intended as an attack on anyone. Kevin laughed, but there was no humor in it. Your truth? What about the truth of the millions of people who respect and admire the royal family? What about the truth of your grandmother, who served this country faithfully for 70 years? Doesn't their truth matter, or is it just about Prince Harry's truth? Of course, other perspectives matter, Harry replied through gritted teeth. But I have a right to tell my story, don't I? I have a right to speak about my experiences without being crucified for it. Absolutely, you have that right, Kevin agreed. But rights come with responsibilities, don't they? And one of those responsibilities is accepting that actions have consequences. You can't expect to make millions of pounds from tell-all books and interviews while simultaneously maintaining your royal titles and expecting public sympathy. The studio fell silent for a moment, the tension almost palpable. Harry's media handler, sitting just off camera, shifted uncomfortably in her chair. This was clearly not going according to plan. I think you're being deliberately inflammatory, Harry finally said, his voice tight with controlled anger. I came here tonight to talk about helping disadvantaged children, not to be lectured about my personal choices. But that's exactly the problem, isn't it? Kevin pressed on relentlessly. You want to compartmentalize everything. You want to be able to criticize and monetize your royal connections when it suits you, but then play the victim when anyone dares to question your motives. You can't have your cake and eat it too. I'm not playing the victim, Harry snapped. I'm simply trying to do some good in the world while being authentic about my experiences. If that threatens some people, then perhaps they need to examine why they're so invested in maintaining a narrative that doesn't reflect reality. Kevin's eyebrows shot up. Threatens people? Prince Harry, you're sitting in a television studio worth millions, wearing a suit that probably costs more than most people's monthly salary, lecturing the British public about reality. Do you not see the irony in that? What I see is someone who's more interested in scoring cheap points than having a genuine conversation about issues that matter, Harry replied, his composure beginning to crack. This is exactly the kind of toxic media environment that I've been talking about. Toxic media environment? Kevin's voice dripped with incredulity. You mean an environment where journalists actually ask difficult questions instead of just nodding along with whatever you want to say? How terribly unfair for you. The cameras continued to roll as the two men stared at each other across the desk, the atmosphere growing more charged by the second. Harry's hands were clenched in his lap, his knuckles white with tension. I think you're being deliberately obtuse, Harry said finally. There's a difference between asking difficult questions and ambushing someone with loaded accusations designed to make them look bad. Loaded accusations? Kevin laughed again. Prince Harry, everything I've mentioned tonight is based on things you've said publicly. Your own words, your own interviews, your own book. If you find those things embarrassing when they're played back to you, perhaps you should have thought about that before you said them. I'm not embarrassed by anything I've said, Harry insisted, though his voice suggested otherwise. I'm frustrated by the way you're twisting everything to fit your narrative. My narrative? Kevin's voice rose with apparent indignation. What narrative would that be? That actions have consequences? That public figures should be held accountable for their words? That you can't have your royal cake and eat it too? Your narrative that I'm some sort of traitor to my country and my family? Harry shot back. Your narrative that speaking honestly about mental health and institutional failures makes me the villain. I never called you a traitor, Kevin replied smoothly. But since you bring it up, what would you call someone who takes money from foreign governments while simultaneously undermining British institutions? What would you call someone who profits from family drama while claiming to want privacy? Harry's face was now visibly red with anger. I would call them someone who's trying to build a different kind of life while still contributing positively to society. But clearly, you've already made up your mind about me. Have I? Kevin asked. Or have you made up your mind about me? You came in here tonight expecting softball questions and automatic deference to your royal status. When you didn't get it, you immediately started playing the victim card. I'm not playing any cards, Harry said, his voice tight. I'm simply trying to have a conversation about important issues, but you seem more interested in character assassination. Character assassination? Kevin's voice rose to match Harry's. Prince Harry, I'm using your own words, your own actions, your own public statements. If that constitutes character assassination, then perhaps the problem isn't with me. The tension in the studio was now so thick it could be cut with a knife. Harry's media handler was making frantic gestures from the sidelines, clearly trying to signal for a commercial break or an end to the interview. But Kevin O'Sullivan wasn't finished yet. Let me ask you something else. Kevin continued, completely ignoring the frantic signals from Harry's team. You've made a career out of talking about your mental health struggles, which is fine. But don't you think it's a bit convenient that every time someone criticizes your behavior, you fall back on mental health as an excuse? Harry's eyes flashed with genuine anger now. That's completely out of line, Kevin. Mental health isn't an excuse. It's a real issue that affects millions of people. The fact that you would trivialize it like that shows exactly what kind of person you are. What kind of person am I? Kevin asked, his voice dangerously quiet. Please, enlighten me. What kind of person asks difficult questions of public figures who profit from their royal connections while simultaneously attacking the institution that gave them those connections? You're the kind of person who uses mental health as a weapon? Harry replied, his voice shaking with emotion. You're the kind of person who thinks that because someone has privilege, they can't have genuine struggles or valid concerns. Oh, I see. Kevin nodded slowly. So anyone who questions Prince Harry's behavior is using mental health as a weapon? Anyone who points out contradictions in your public statements is somehow attacking people with mental health issues? That's a very convenient way to shut down criticism, isn't it? That's not what I'm saying at all. Harry protested, but his voice lacked conviction. I'm saying that your approach is deliberately inflammatory and designed to cause maximum damage. Damage to whom? Kevin pressed. To you? To your reputation? To your ability to monetize your royal connections? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you're the one causing damage to institutions that millions of people hold dear. I'm not damaging anything, Harry insisted. I'm trying to modernize and improve things. I'm trying to bring transparency and accountability to institutions that have operated in secrecy for too long. Kevin leaned back in his chair, a look of mock surprise on his face. Transparency and accountability? Is that what you call it? So, when you and your wife sat down with a billionaire media mogul and made unsubstantiated claims about your family, that was transparency? When you wrote a book full of private conversations and petty grievances, that was accountability? Those weren't unsubstantiated claims, Harry shot back. Those were our experiences, our truth about what happened behind closed doors. Your truth again, Kevin said with obvious disdain. But what about verification? What about corroboration? What about the basic journalistic principle of confirming facts before you publish them? Or does that not apply when you're a prince with a book deal? I don't need to verify my own experiences, Harry replied, his voice rising again. I was there. I lived through it. I know what happened. Do you? Kevin challenged. Because memory is a funny thing, isn't it? Especially when there's money involved. Especially when you're angry and hurt and looking for someone to blame. How do we know that your version of events isn't colored by your own emotional state? Harry's face was now a deep shade of red. Are you seriously questioning my memory? Are you suggesting that I made up the racism and the lack of support for mental health issues? I'm suggesting that your version of events is exactly that. Your version? Kevin replied calmly. And that presenting it as objective truth without any opportunity for the other parties to respond is fundamentally unfair. They had plenty of opportunities to respond, Harry protested. They chose not to. Oh, they chose not to? Kevin's voice was dripping with sarcasm. Or perhaps they chose to maintain some dignity and not engage in a public family feud? Perhaps they chose to follow the traditional royal approach of never complain, never explain? Perhaps they chose to maintain a cover-up, Harry countered. Perhaps they chose to protect an institution over protecting people. Or perhaps, Kevin said, his voice becoming more forceful, they chose to protect the monarchy that represents stability and continuity for millions of people over the hurt feelings of one privileged individual who couldn't handle the responsibilities that came with his position. The studio fell silent again, the weight of Kevin's words hanging in the air. Harry's breathing was visibly labored, his hands trembling slightly as he gripped the arms of his chair. You have no idea what you're talking about, Harry finally said, his voice barely above a whisper. You have no idea what it's like to grow up in that environment, to have your every move scrutinized, to have your mental health ignored when you're crying out for help. You're absolutely right, Kevin acknowledged. I don't know what that's like, but I do know what it's like to work for a living. I know what it's like to pay taxes to support an institution that you've spent years undermining. I know what it's like to watch someone with every advantage in life complain about how hard they have it. Every advantage? Harry's voice was incredulous. You think losing your mother at 12 years old is an advantage? You think having your private grief turned into a public spectacle is an advantage? No, I don't, Kevin replied, his voice softening slightly. And I'm genuinely sorry for your loss. But Harry, that was 25 years ago. At some point, you have to take responsibility for your own choices and your own actions. You can't keep using childhood trauma as an excuse for adult behavior. I'm not using it as an excuse, Harry protested. I'm using it as an explanation for why certain things affected me the way they did. But that's exactly what an excuse is, Kevin pointed out. You're saying that because of your trauma, your behavior is somehow justified or understandable. But what about the trauma you've caused to your family? What about the trauma you've caused to people who believed in you and supported you? What trauma have I caused? Harry demanded. By telling the truth? By speaking honestly about my experiences? By betraying confidences, Kevin replied sharply. By monetizing private family conversations. By making your grandmother's final years more difficult than they needed to be. By turning your family into a soap opera for public consumption. Harry's composure was completely gone now. That's not what I did. That's not what any of this was about. Isn't it? Kevin pressed. Then what was it about? What was the point of all the interviews, all the revelations, all the drama? What did you hope to achieve? I hope to make things better, Harry said, his voice cracking slightly. I hope to bring about change, to modernize the institution, to make it more relevant and responsive to modern concerns. And how's that working out for you? Kevin asked with brutal directness. Has the monarchy become more modern? Has it become more responsive, or has it just become more defensive and more closed off because of your attacks? They're not attacks, Harry insisted weakly. They're attempts at reform. Reform? Kevin laughed harshly. You call public humiliation reform? You call airing dirty laundry and international media reform? That's not reform, Harry, that's revenge. It's not revenge, Harry said, but his voice lacked any conviction. Then what is it? Kevin demanded. What do you call it when you take private family disputes and turn them into public entertainment? What do you call it when you profit from family drama while claiming to want privacy? Harry opened his mouth to respond, but no words came out. For the first time since the interview began, he seemed genuinely speechless. The cameras continued to roll, capturing every moment of his discomfort. I'll tell you what I call it, Kevin continued, pressing his advantage. I call it a betrayal of everything your family stands for. I call it a betrayal of the country that gave you everything you have. I call it the actions of someone who's lost sight of what really matters. You don't know what really matters, Harry finally managed to say. You don't know what it's like to have your own family turn against you when you need them most. Turn against you? Kevin's voice rose again. Or hold you accountable for your choices? There's a difference, Harry. A big difference. The tension in the studio was now almost unbearable. Harry's media handler was standing up, clearly preparing to intervene. But Kevin wasn't finished yet. Let me ask you one final question, Kevin said, his voice cutting through the tension like a blade. Do you genuinely believe that your actions over the past few years have made the world a better place? Do you honestly think that attacking your family, undermining British institutions, and turning your personal grievances into a global media circus has achieved anything positive? Harry stared at him for a long moment, his face a mask of barely controlled rage. I think, he said slowly, that you're a small-minded, bitter man who gets his kicks from tearing down people who are trying to make a difference. Kevin's eyebrows shot up. There we go. There's the real Prince Harry. Not the wounded victim, not the mental health advocate, but the entitled brat who throws insults when he can't win an argument. I'm not throwing insults, Harry protested, but his voice was shaking with anger. I'm making an observation about your character and your motivations. My motivations? Kevin laughed. My motivation is to ask the questions that other journalists are too starstruck or too cowardly to ask. My motivation is to hold public figures accountable for their actions. What's your motivation, Harry? What's really driving all of this? My motivation is to protect my family, Harry replied, his voice rising to nearly a shout. My motivation is to create a better world for my children. My motivation is to break the cycle of dysfunction that has plagued my family for generations. By perpetuating it? Kevin shot back. By creating more drama, more division, more pain? How exactly does that break any cycles? How does turning your family into a reality show protect anyone? You wouldn't understand, Harry said, his voice becoming cold and distant. You've never had to live under that kind of pressure, that kind of scrutiny. You've never had to watch your mother be hounded to death by the media. No, I haven't, Kevin agreed. But I also haven't spent the last few years courting that same media attention while simultaneously complaining about it. I haven't signed multi-million-dollar deals to share private family moments with the world. Those deals allow me to be financially independent, Harry replied defensively. They allow me to support my family without relying on public funds. Financial independence? Kevin's voice was incredulous. You're talking about financial independence while living in a mansion that most people could never afford? While your security costs are still being covered by taxpayers? That's not independence, Harry. That's having your cake and eating it too. My security costs are not covered by taxpayers, Harry protested. Are you sure about that? Kevin challenged. Because every time you visit the UK, every time you make a public appearance, there are costs involved. Costs that someone has to pay. And it's not just financial costs, is it? It's the cost to your family's reputation, the cost to the monarchy's standing, the cost to Britain's image around the world. Harry's face was now contorted with rage. I don't care about Britain's image. I care about the truth. I care about accountability. I care about not letting people get away with treating others badly just because they have titles and power. But you have a title and power, Kevin pointed out. You've used that title and power to launch attacks on people who can't defend themselves publicly. You've used your platform to settle personal scores while claiming to be fighting for justice. I'm not settling scores, Harry insisted, but his voice lacked conviction. Aren't you? Kevin pressed. What would you call writing a book full of private conversations with your father and brother? What would you call publicly questioning their character and their motivations? What would you call turning family disagreements into international headlines? I would call it telling my story, Harry replied weakly. Your story, Kevin repeated. Always your story, never their story. Never the story of the institution that gave you everything you have. Never the story of the millions of people who respected and admired you before you decided to burn it all down. I didn't burn anything down, Harry protested. Didn't you? Kevin's voice was relentless. Then why are you less popular now than you've ever been? Why do polls show that most British people have lost respect for you? Why do your own family members reportedly refuse to speak to you? Because people like you have poisoned them against me, Harry shot back. Because the media has twisted everything I've said and done to fit their narrative. The media? Kevin laughed harshly. Harry, you are the media now. You've made yourself into a media brand. You can't blame the media for your problems when you've become part of it. I'm not part of the problem, Harry insisted. I'm trying to be part of the solution. By doing what? Kevin demanded. By attacking your family? By undermining British institutions? By turning your personal therapy sessions into public entertainment? How is any of that a solution? Harry was silent for a long moment, his breathing heavy and labored. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. I think we're done here. Are we? Kevin asked. Are we done because you've run out of arguments? Are we done because you can't defend your actions? Or are we done because you've realized that maybe, just maybe, you've made some mistakes? We're done because I don't have to sit here and listen to this, Harry said, his voice growing stronger. I don't have to justify my choices to you or to anyone else. But you do, Kevin replied calmly. That's exactly what you have to do. You made your choices public. You profited from them. You use them to attack other people. You absolutely have to justify them. No, I don't, Harry said, starting to stand up. I came here to talk about my foundation, not to be ambushed by someone with a clear agenda. My agenda is the truth, Kevin said, not backing down. My agenda is accountability. My agenda is asking the questions that need to be asked. Your agenda is humiliation, Harry replied, pulling off his microphone. Your agenda is tearing down anyone who threatens your small-minded view of the world. Harry, sit down, Kevin said firmly. We're live on television. You can't just walk away from difficult questions. Watch me, Harry replied, his voice cold and final. I'm done with this circus. I'm done with people like you who think they can judge me without knowing the full story. The full story? Kevin called after him as Harry began to move toward the edge of the set. You've spent years telling us the full story. You've written books about it, given interviews about it, made documentaries about it. If we don't know the full story by now, whose fault is that? Harry stopped and turned back to face Kevin, his face twisted with rage. The fault lies with people who refuse to listen, who refuse to understand, who refuse to show basic human compassion. Compassion? Kevin's voice rose to match Harry's. What compassion did you show your grandmother in her final years? What compassion did you show your father when he was dealing with his own health issues? What compassion did you show your brother when he was trying to support you through your struggles? I showed them honesty, Harry replied. I showed them truth. I showed them that I wouldn't be silenced anymore. You showed them betrayal, Kevin shot back. You showed them that family loyalty means nothing when there's money to be made and scores to be settled. That's enough, Harry said, his voice shaking with emotion. I'm not going to stand here and listen to any more of this. Then don't, Kevin replied. Walk away. Prove my point. Show everyone watching that when Prince Harry faces difficult questions, when he's held accountable for his actions, he runs away. Harry stared at him for a long moment, his fists clenched at his sides. You know what? You're right. I am walking away. But not because I can't handle your questions. I'm walking away because life is too short to waste on people like you. People like me? Kevin asked. You mean people who ask difficult questions? People who expect public figures to be accountable for their actions? People who won't bow and scrape just because someone has a title? I mean people who are more interested in destroying than building, Harry replied. People who get their satisfaction from tearing others down rather than lifting them up. I'm not tearing you down, Harry, Kevin said, his voice suddenly quieter. You're doing that all by yourself. I'm just pointing it out. Those words seemed to hit Harry like a physical blow. He stood there for a moment, mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water, clearly struggling to find a response. When none came, he turned and walked off the set, leaving Kevin sitting alone at the desk. Kevin watched him go, then turned back to the camera. Ladies and gentlemen, that was Prince Harry, walking away from questions he apparently couldn't answer. I suppose when you've spent years avoiding accountability, facing it head-on can be quite a shock. The studio was eerily quiet now, the only sound the gentle hum of the camera still rolling. Kevin straightened his tie and looked directly into the lens. We'll be right back after this break with more of your calls and comments on tonight's rather eventful interview. As the credits began to roll and the studio lights dimmed, one thing was abundantly clear. This was an interview that would be talked about for years to come. An interview that perfectly captured the collision between old-school journalism and modern celebrity culture, between accountability and entitlement, between those who ask the hard questions and those who run away when they can't provide good answers. What did you think of tonight's explosive confrontation? Did Kevin O'Sullivan go too far? Or was he exactly the kind of journalist we need more of? Let me know in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe for more incredible stories like this one.